February 13th, Affordable Housing Committee. It is 7 o'clock. I'm going to get the meeting started. Tonight we will open for public comment, approve the minutes from December and January, and then we have a local expert with us to talk about septic and wastewater and all that. Then we're going to talk about what we are on the hook for in terms of the town plan. The Planning Commission is requesting that we develop SMART goals, and so we can talk about that. And then next month, before our next meeting, is town meeting day. So we'll review what we'll be tabling at town meeting, liaison updates, other business, March agenda, and adjourn. Does anyone have any questions, concerns, changes to the agenda?
New business?
Can new business be other business?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm flexible.
Awesome. Justin, I imagine you don't have any public comment not related to what you're here to talk about tonight.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So I will move on to agenda item 3. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from December?
I move.
Thanks, Wayne. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Eric. Any edits or changes to the December minutes? Seeing anybody? All those in favor of approving those minutes, say aye. Aye. Any abstain? Oh, abstain. Okay, that's one abstain. All right, and we'll do the same for January. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from January? Thank you, Stacy. And do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Eric. Any edits, changes to those minutes? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any abstain? Sorry. Okay. All right, so moving on to agenda item number 4. We've been talking a lot about, the town has been talking a lot about ADUs in particular, trying to increase residential density, talking about gentle infill and things like that. And one of the biggest things that people run up against when they're thinking about adding an ADU or looking to put maybe another unit on their property is septic and wastewater. And so trying to get a handle on what does it look like on the ground, in the ground, literally, what kinds of things are folks in Jericho running up against when trying to add an ADU, add a septic system, or add to their septic system? And what are the kinds of things they need to consider, and what should we know as we talk to people about doing that? So invited Justin here also to try and get on his good side, because we're going to be calling you in the next, my husband and I are going to be calling you in the next couple of months because we are in need. But yeah, I guess anything that you think would be helpful for us to know, both as a housing committee, but also to share with the public as they start coming to us asking about ADUs.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
Before we get too far in there, Justin, can you sort of provide those of us who aren't familiar with you and your role in the town and in septic background?
I'm a member of the DRB. And I am a licensed water supply, wastewater system designer by the state of Vermont. I've been licensed since 1990, been doing it a while. I do vast majority of my work in Jericho, Underhill, and then 20-30 years ago, I would drive to Moncton for work. Now I don't put any miles on, it's all here. So most of my work, it used to be a mixed bag of small subdivisions, accessory dwellings, lots of failed systems. And then leading into COVID, I saw ADUs picking up, and then post-COVID, it's all about ADUs. And so that's mostly that and failed systems, and miscellaneous types of projects is what I'm focused on now, because I figure, there's so many different aspects to this that it's more practical just to focus on certain types of permitting, because I'm pretty good at doing the ADUs. They can become complicated. So I had a question. Is it, so the housing committee, is that select board appointed, advisory? It's purely advisory? Yep.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
advisory and we're all appointed by the select board, yeah.
Yep.
So you said you've been seeing a big uptick in ADUs since COVID?
That's 2/3 of the calls I get.
Wow,
Yeah.
how many do you think you're doing a year?
Right now I'm working on 5, 6, or 7 in Jericho and Underhill. Maybe 1 in Richmond. Just to keep it simple, that is your biggest bang for your buck, to get roofs over people's heads. There's just no doubt about it. We all know what building costs. We all know what permitting is like. It's the path of least resistance. And there's a number of ways to accomplish that. And it can get a little complicated, but in a nutshell, if you have a house and you're increasing design flows, you're adding a bedroom, you're adding an apartment, you have to meet full compliance with the state rules. And it's not terribly practical in some areas. For instance, I'll give you there's parts of Jericho where we have 1/4 acre lots. There's a lot of subdivisions in Essex where you have plenty of good soil. You can meet all the state rules except for the isolation to a property line. And that pretty much kills a lot of these right from the get-go. So it's isolation to property line. That can be resolved by obtaining easements that overlap the neighbors, if the neighbors are willing to play along, whether they be compensated or they just want to do it for the greater good. Most of the time, people don't want to be involved. And I was going to add before I forget, so the state has universal jurisdiction over wastewater. So you can't propose any mandates in regards to shared systems or anything like that. I think ADUs versus new houses is kind of a little bit different beast, but density is my advice would be proposed density, high density on lots that really don't have on-site septic potential, or there's not enough room, but next to properties that do. And that might stimulate a conversation between the landowner and the neighbor to obtain an easement. I can honestly tell you that I could probably go through, I did it in Richmond at one time when I was on the planning commission there, but I can honestly tell you that I could probably go property by property in Jericho and tell you which ones have potential and which ones don't. And the number one thing to focus on is septic capacity. Second would be water. If you got town water, you're golden. If you don't, then things get complicated. People think that the wastewater system is what it's all about. It's not. You have to have sufficient yield when you have 2 dwelling units. So that's a big part of it. Another little trick that we do a lot, which is perfectly legitimate, people do all the time. If you have a 3-bedroom home and one of the bedrooms is tiny, call it a den and add on an apartment. You can do that. So you're not increasing the design flows. You might still have to address some stuff with the well, but if you have a grandfathered 3-bedroom, you're guaranteed the ability to convert to a 2+1. It doesn't work that way with a 4-bedroom house because the design flows for the 4th bedroom and 4-bedroom house are different. A 4-bedroom house to convert to a 3+1, you'd have to have 5 bedrooms. Because it's based on occupancy, the 4th and 5th bedroom, 1 person, bedroom 1, 2, and 3, 2 people, and apartments, 2 people. So.
Could you go through that again? Could you go through that again?
Yeah,
Difference
so,
between a 3-bedroom and a 4, the difference between 3 and 4 bedroom.
yeah, okay, so yeah, I'll back up. That's a little confusing. So design flows for wastewater. Let's say you have a 4-bedroom home. It's 2 people per bedroom for the first 3 bedrooms, 70 gallons a day each. So it's 420 gallons a day. The 4th bedroom is 70 gallons a day. So that's only 1 person, and an apartment has to be 2. So you got to have a 5-bedroom home. Another little angle, this gets a little even more complicated. That's helped a few people.
So, excuse me, if you had a 5-bedroom home, then you would leave 3 in 1 and 2, and 1 in the apartment.
You could take a 5-bedroom home and turn 2 bedrooms in office, den, whatever, and build an apartment. Or convert one of the rooms into the apartment. It works well for people that have these old farmhouses with teeny tiny rooms, which you might
Yeah.
have, you know.
That would it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
one more little thing, I don't want to overcomplicate it, so you may not want to write this down, but there is a little section in the rules that would allow somebody to do the same thing. If they had an old permit from the town for like a 4-bedroom home, and the design flows back then were higher, you could take that 4-bedroom home and turn it into a 3+1, as long as you don't add more than 10 fixture units, which is, you know, basically a, you know, bathroom group, kitchen sink, wash machine. It's being used. It's not clear in the rules, but it's there, and the state is kind of leaving it up to the consultants to explain it to the landowners. So I have no problem telling somebody that they don't need to hire me. You know, I've got plenty of work. Yeah, and so that's ADUs. Like I said, I would focus on ADUs, multifamily, same kind of deal. But ADUs, you have the existing infrastructure. You know this. You've got the driveway, you got the power, you got a water hookup. You're well on your way. You don't have to buy a building lot. So that's it. That's until real estate prices come under control over the next, I don't know how many years. This is what all people are going to be calling about. Me anyways, the vast number of them. I do get subdivision calls. I got 1 or 2 today, and I just pass them off to the some of the engineering firms that do everything in-house, because that gets complicated with stormwater, wetlands surveying. It's just a lot of moving parts. So not that you don't have to deal with, I have to deal with wetland people all the time, even with an ADU or even with a failed system. That's kind of a thorn in everybody's side, but it is what it is. It's the law right now, so we deal with it. But
Justin, are there places where you would recommend, where you think would be better for the town to add water than the sewer?
well, I'm impartial, and I thought that the Jericho Center would be. Because it's, I don't know how far it was, but I know it's been looked into. But more importantly, I always thought fire protection was probably more important than adding houses. But to save the store, should something happen, or any other properties. But that adding the water, I did pull up a map, and I just give you an example. I don't want to, I'm not sure I want to name names, but there's property owners on either side of Jericho Elementary School that have pretty large properties. And the soil is incredible. There's soil there that could support dozens of homes, at least, you know, lots and lots and lots of homes. But I know the people on both sides and work for both of them, and you know, they're, you can't approach them, I don't think, at this point, or maybe you could, but they're not interested in any of the development potential, even though they know about it. You know, so I would just go and identify, first thing I would do is, you know, you can focus on the water second. It's all about septic first. And we can drill wells, we can spend tens of thousands on developing a water supply if we have to, but on a small lot, doesn't work. You don't meet the isolation to a septic. So that's where water does become absolutely critical.
Do you have any, how different, so I have a failing system and am considering an ADU in the next 5 to 10 years.
Mhm.
How easy or difficult is it to increase the capacity? If I've got to replace a failing system.
Good
To take
call.
the
That's what
opportunity to add increase.
yeah. That's exactly, so that's what I tell people. I just worked on a house in Huntington, beautiful property, big house, 2 bedrooms. And his system failed and we're upgrading to up to 5. He doesn't have to build them, but he can do 5, or he can do an apartment with 3 bedrooms. It takes the sting out of it. People aren't happy about replacing septics, but if they see that they just bumped up the property value, not just by fixing deficient system, but they've added a bedroom, they've got potential for an apartment. I'm doing one in Richmond for an old couple. They're talking about selling in a couple of years, and they know the septic's old, and we're going to get a permit for that in an apartment. They even have the apartment, the structure, framed next in a garage. Like, yeah.
How much more it is to do that?
Like, what's the difference in price between a 3-bedroom, 4-bed, or 3-bedroom,
It
4-bedroom,
depends.
5?
It depends. If the soil's all sand and you're on town water, it's negligible. If it's a mound system, it could add $2,000-3,000 to the cost. If you have to pull out all the stops and put a pre-treatment unit in, like an aerobic treatment system, that could add 5-6. But I look at that on every property, even when somebody says my system's failed, I'm like, here's a good opportunity to, capitalize it. Everybody says, a lot of people say, well, I'm never going to move, I'm going to die here. But the reality is things change and attitudes change, and they're preserving their property value matters.
This is an interesting insight. It's not just sizing septic for a new home, but anytime someone has it replaced.
Justin, can you quantify that a little bit more when you say it's a couple thousand more? If I have hypothetical, I'm not on town water, I've got your generic plain vanilla septic system for 3 bedrooms, and I want to bump it up to 5 because the leach field is failing.
Mhm.
What's the difference in what's the, just a rough estimate's fine, silly wild ballpark, yes is good, for replacing my 3-bedroom system versus adding it up to a 5-bedroom? How much
It
more?
depends on the system configuration. Could be low as $1,000, could be as much as 8 or 10. And then if you have a drilled well, that can become a huge issue. If you don't have enough water, you have to. The state rules basically say that a single family home has to have 5 gallon a minute yielding well, and they don't care if you get less than that. You're for a single family, but when you go into multifamily, it's 5 gallons per unit. And not only does the well have to produce better flows or a combination of storage, you would have to upgrade the pump so it can discharge if everybody's turning all the faucets on at the same time. But the water supply can be a big issue. I just did one in up in Underhill by Maple Leaf Farm, and we had plenty of water to supply the ADU above an existing garage, but the well wasn't built quite in conformance with current rules. And so we've been going on a few weeks here trying to work that out with the state, find an angle, because it's a shame, because a well water supply could be, they start at 10,000. They used to be 3 or 4 or 5, but now they're 10, 12, up to 20. I've got a 1,200-foot well in Richmond right now with nothing yet. So you never know. Town water then becomes critical for areas that don't have good wells, or they have small lots.
And since I assume you're pretty familiar with the Jericho territory, my impression has always been that 80% or more of Jericho households are on drilled wells. From your understanding, what percentage of those would fall below the standard to add an ADU?
I couldn't tell you. You can have somebody can have a 50 gallon a minute well, and the person next door could have a 0.25. It's the roll of the dice. That's why when people tell me they're getting prices for wells, I say it doesn't matter. Hire somebody you trust, because once they start drilling, you don't know when it's gonna stop.
So when you said multifamily home with 5 gallons per minute, does that include an ADU? Is that considered a
Yes.
multifamily?
Yes. Yeah.
It's 5
It doesn't,
gallons.
yeah, it doesn't mean I need to have a 10 gallon a minute well. If you want to add an ADU, again, there's certain exemptions where it doesn't matter if it can get more complicated here, but in a nutshell, it doesn't mean you need 10 gallons a minute for 2 units. It means you need a combination of yield and storage within the well casing and the well borehole. So if you have a 600-foot well, the pump's at 580 feet, and the static level, the water rises within 10 feet of surface, you got a lot of water there, 1.5 gallons a foot, or more if you hire Spafford, because they use 7-inch casing. But the water supply is, when people call me up, I'm like, yeah, look at the soil maps. Okay, that's good, but let me see what you got for a well. And, somebody's got a 20 gallon a minute well. The state cuts the yield in half unless you test it, unless you do a formal test. Then they would have 10 gallons a minute. They're set. They're all set. That's just an example. One more instance, don't want to complicate too much, but this is good to know, is that a 3-bedroom home, up to a 3-bedroom home with a 1-bedroom attached apartment, they don't look at the well yield. So those are the people that have a 3-bedroom home that want to add 1 bedroom. It doesn't matter how many gallons a minute the well produces right now. We may just need to upgrade the pump and the pressure tank and some of that equipment in the house. A lot of people are willing to do that. Willing to give up a bedroom. I've got some that won't, because the houses are so big and expensive. They just say, I'll just pay the price, start drilling, and if it's bad, then we'll change it. So your sweet spot for ADUs, the absolute easiest path of least resistance is swap a bedroom, and the next one is to stay under a total of 4 bedrooms with an attached apartment. That's the way to go. The legislature passed the Home Act, which you probably know, and I met with one of them, and she was proud of herself because they're allowing duplexes in every town. I'm like, well, I don't ever get calls for duplexes. And in some towns it's already allowed. A lot of towns, I think Jericho is too. Richmond is. So that didn't really help a whole lot. They did address the parking requirements, and I think beginning December 1st of this year, people can go 900 square feet or 30% of the habitable floor area, whichever is greater. So if you had a 6,000 square foot house, you could do 1,800 square foot apartment. If I did my math right. So, excuse me, I just think, like every day that goes by where somebody plunks a house in the middle of their lot that's all sand and gravel because it's for their son or their family, you got to respect that. But it's a waste of land in areas that you want to grow. And you can't do anything about it. People just insist on that, and it's their right.
Can you talk about the possibility of technology that either exists or is coming that could, maybe pre-treatment or something that would allow for an expansion of capacity in the leach field? That would make it possible more out of the same stuff than an existing leach field.
That's a good question. I just resigned after 20 years on the advisory committee that reports to the legislature on that and helps write the rules. And they did that when they just adopted the most recent version, which is, effective, I think, November 2023. Understanding how long it takes to rewrite and enact new law, we're not gonna see anything anytime soon. I mean, there's people that have good intentions, they're gonna try to, but my experience after being on that for over 20 years is that don't hold your breath. There are technologies now, we're allowed to, if you wanna know the nitty gritty, if you build a mound system, a lot of people know this, you don't need to design a replacement area like you used to. So that conserves space. If you're gonna do an in-ground system and you don't have enough room to do a primary and a future backup that's required, you can build a single system, build it 150% size, upsize it 50% and pressurize it. That helps. I spec out treatment units quite often, more than a lot of consultants. They don't like them, but I kind of like it. I look at it as a utility. There's somebody that comes once a year and inspects it. And they don't have to worry about it with advanced treatment. The system is going to last a lot longer than the standard system. But it's only helpful when you have no other choice to accomplish your goal, or if you're building on the lakefront, or you want to take a conservative approach, or if you have to build a mound and you want to shrink the size of the mound, you can do that. There's a number of different types of treatment systems. Too many to list, but there's the one that's passive that goes through peat moss or coconut husks. And there's one that the distributor from Onsite Septic, which is right on Route 15 in Cambridge, sells, which is it's just a concrete tank. I'll put it simply, it's just a concrete tank with a blender motor in the bottom, and when the blender spins, the propeller spins, the shaft to the propeller is a hollow tube. It draws air down in from up above, and it bubbles it. And when it comes out, it's clear and odorless.
Could a unit like that be added to a conventional system as pre-treatment?
Yes.
Avoid having to expand the leach field.
Yes, but if you're required to comply, whatever, we have to. Well, people will ask me, well, can I just expand my leach field? Well, if it was engineered and permitted in the last 10 years, probably, or if there's room and soil. But if it's a 30, 40-year-old system, it's unlikely it's going to meet today's rules. So we don't bother with it. We start over.
What's the different scenario? I mean, we have in Jericho, as you know, quite a lot of subdivisions with community septic. How do these regulations work on a community septic? So if you've got a 3-bedroom house and you're on a community septic, can you take 1 bedroom, call it a den or something like that, and put another one on there, or does that violate the community septic?
That's a real good question. That happens. So you got I know I got a call from a property owner over in I think it's Saxon Oaks, maybe off of Skunk Hollow Road. I think that's the development. Anyways, they're on
Tyler Place, you mean?
Pardon?
Tyler Place.
No, the other one on the other side of the road.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
There's one in there. It's not a lot of houses, but anyways, when the person calls and is on a community system and they want, whether it be wastewater and water or water, they have to go through the motions with this to see if the system was over designed. And if there's things they can do to upsize it by adding treatment, like Chuck said, I mean, that's a great idea. I mean, then everybody's on board. I can tell you if somebody in the development wants to do that, they kind of have to get permission from everybody. And if you're getting permission from everybody, it gets everybody else thinking about it. So it makes sense that if you're going to do that for one person, if you have more capacity, just do it all at once. It can get complicated with the water again, as they've said, but that doesn't happen as often. I think a lot of these community systems are stretched and stressed right now. I know of a few, and I know a lot of them in Chittenden County that didn't last more than 10 years. So I'm not a big fan of community systems, even though I'll do a shared one up to 2 or 3 houses. But design it conservatively. You know, more tank capacity, things like that.
Mhm. So it's much more difficult than if you're on the community system I'm on is about 17, 18 houses. It's about 30 years old. Due
Yeah.
for a replacement almost very soon, I suspect.
Yeah, and I know they found out a lot of these systems haven't been monitored in accordance with their state permits. Some of these are supposed to have alternating systems and, you know, they alternated once because the system failed and they haven't dealt with it. But I assume that that's been worked out because people are transferring property without clouds on the title. So, but it's definitely more difficult to, you know, if you're on a shared system, there's no doubt, but it's worth looking into. It always is. The one on Skunk Hollow Road, she did get a permit and she did do it. And, and I did want to say before I forget this is that despite the Airbnb craze, I think that's, I don't get calls for that very often. I mean, most of the ones I'm working on is my son can't find a house. He's given up and he's got money, or we want to live in a ADA accessible attached or detached cottage. And we're gonna do a life estate. We'll deed the property to our kids, you know, things like that. There's a lot of that. And there's more of that than people saying, I just want to have it and I'll Airbnb it until I get sick of it, or I'll rent it out a couple days here and there and then let my friends and family stay at it when they're up. Some of them do that, but that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money to invest for that kind of passive use. And you probably know about the
How often do, how
Go ahead.
often do people, this is really interesting, Justin. So you're saying what I think we have heard is that people add an ADU when they have a personal need for it.
yes,
Heard.
it's not all Airbnb. Yeah.
How often do you hear from people who want it just for the extra income? They're gonna build it and then they're gonna rent it out.
I think a lot of them don't come out and say it because they're kind of embarrassed, I think. I don't know. But a lot of them will have another purpose for it, not just Airbnb, because I know a lot of people doing Airbnbs are getting sick of it. They're getting tired of it. And, you know, it's great when you look at it on paper and you got the thing rented every night, you know, 52 weeks of the year, but I haven't done it myself, but I imagine that gets old, you know.
Yeah.
I have had a lot of people that don't understand the Home Act or the statute. And I just got a call from another one where this woman in Cambridge bought a house and wants to put an apartment in the garage. And I said, well, you're talking about, you know, the so-called mother-in-law apartment. It's not written that way, but you know, it's an ADU per state statute that says the landowner has to live in one of the units. That's not her intention. So there's a little bit of sneaking around going with that. Mostly investors, and it wouldn't be so much around here, but it would be out in the Cambridge, Fletcher, Fairfax area, Waterville. People are buying, you know, these distressed properties and packing housing in them, and doing Airbnbs and wedding events, and if they get a nice view and they got a big yard. Not that you can, you know, zoning dictates that.
I think we're also seeing a lot of the developments. You know, all of our systems are failing at the same time. And so is there any, you were talking about easements earlier, and you're saying that you don't recommend community systems.
No, well, yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's just my opinion. If they're not, it becomes a maintenance issue. Anytime people share things, driveways, septic systems, you know, if the association isn't set up right and people don't take it seriously, they fall apart.
Yeah.
And then then neighbors get angry with each other because, you know, one of the neighbors isn't pumping their tank and the other one is, and he's worried they're going to cause problems with the system. You know, it's a whole variety of stuff, but community system is an answer to the housing problem. You know, they have to be designed properly, conservatively, and maintained. And that's a problem that more often with shared systems.
When you say that you could sit down with a map and kind of go parcel by parcel, so what would it take to get you to do that? What do you charge? What kind of cookies do you like? And I'm only half joking.
Well, I could start by just, you know, it's just soil map, the NRCS soil maps, we all have access to that stuff on the Vermont A&R Atlas. Or even USDA site, but I use those maps just as a guide. If somebody calls me up and I don't know the property or the area well, I'll look at that map and I'll say, yeah, it says it's well-drained soil. And sometimes I'll get out there and it's, yeah, it is, but the water's right to the surface, you know? So if anything, I could start by telling you properties I'm aware of, number one. And then just by soil map and proximity to water, you know, we could say, well, let's look at this, you know, but people don't like their properties targeted necessarily, but if you do it in general, you don't mention names, that's fine. It is, you know, you got a 2-acre property with gravel and sand and next to the Jericho Elementary School with town water. I mean, you know, you can't ignore it. You know, for planning purposes, doesn't mean you can make them do it. They could plunk a house right in the middle of it and you're all done, you know? So.
Are you familiar with the wastewater study that's being done, and has that already identified many of these properties?
Repeat that, please.
There's a wastewater survey being done for Jericho.
Suitability survey, yeah, it's been done a couple times.
They got one that's just about done right now.
Yeah, they actually did one. My wife was zoning administrator in the '90s, and the town hired Stone Environmental to do one. Well, part of that study was to say, does it make sense to have town sewer? And I could tell you, no, not with today's technology without spending any money. But they had to look at it, and they did look at soil suitability. Those maps help, but they're all based on the NRCS maps. They haven't been physically verified or confirmed or whatever, you know. And other than you know, my experience with particular neighborhoods and areas.
You'll be thrilled to know that there's a new version of that at the 60% completion rate right now that's being done. So
oh, good. Good.
Yeah, it's the fourth one since the 60s.
Yeah, that'd be cool to look at. Yeah.
So if, you know, as Affordable Housing Committee, we've been kind of looking at, you know, what the goals are for the town in terms of developing new housing. And, you know, housing that's kind of lends itself more to, you know, middle and lower income people, you know, if possible. And what we were looking at is like the goal of building 150 new housing units in the next 4 years in Jericho.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is that, you know, if I tell you that number and at the same time it does, you know, we don't get towns sewer or water, do you think that's at all realistic, or is that just like not even realistic?
150 in how many years?
5 years.
40?
20 years. End of 2029.
5 years.
And 140 in 5 years?
Yeah.
January 1, 2029.
Well, you can't make it happen. You can't go knocking on some of these, you know, unless it's developed, and you know, the cost of building is ridiculous right now, but they do, so builders need incentives, and that starts with zoning. And anything that you can do that helps, that doesn't, you know, overstep your boundaries of state law, but the state law, I believe, lets you do a lot of things with like ADUs. You can do, you know, Richmond will let you do 2-bedroom ADUs, and big ones. I don't, and yeah, so the number of bedrooms, I don't really know how to answer that question. I can tell, I can identify properties where you could probably put 150 in 4 years, but you're looking at permitting taking 2. So for.
No, just from a sewer water perspective.
Yeah,
If-
yeah, the rules aren't, the new rules that we have now aren't gonna change for, I would just, on average, it's 5+ years. So we're stuck with the rules we have, so based on that, you know, I would say, you know, I can pick out a few properties and come up with probably 20 units pretty quickly. And if you combine, you know, and I remember the Eatons. Some of you might remember the Eatons did a proposal there, across from Silly Hill Road. And I think they got it all approved, and it was basically 4 tiny single-family homes with an apartment over every garage, every one of them. And the person that bought it, who I've been over there and I did soil testing, replaced their septic, last year, year before, you know, they have no interest in that. So what do? You know, they liked it a lot the way it is, but that was a good way to pack it in. I mean, if the water was there, the soil was great, all gravel. You know, there's just these areas here that once they're gone, they're gone. Once you put a building, at least in our lifetime.
Yeah.
I've been talking to people in Richmond about the same thing. They've got 50% sewer capacity. Instead of really going aggressive on their zoning, they're inviting septic companies to dump high strength wastewater in their plant. I mean, that's kind of kicking the can down the road, but it's my understanding they're working on it.
This is really interesting. We need to treat high capacity soil. This like kind of the way we treat high capacity ag land. You know, that it's a resource that has to be protected.
They tend to be.
Unless we're gonna, or we have to build wastewater systems, you know, it's like.
Yeah.
But that's what that,
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a resource that should be wasted. And you probably know there's all along Lake Champlain, there's camps that are all hooked up to these vast community septic systems that pump up across the road and up into a farmer's field. You know, it worked, and I think maybe the zoning discouraged the farmer from really making a lot of money, but when they bought it for the septic capacity and he still gets to hay it, that's a good thing.
Now those fields are getting shut down in Maine for PFAS.
Yeah. And but I did a 3-lot subdivision like 5, 6, 7 years ago on Plains Road in an 11-acre field. It's all gravel, and I felt terrible about it, you know, because we plunked 3 beautiful houses in there, and it had septic capacity for 20, 30, I don't know how many, just lots and lots of houses, and that's gone. And you know, the owner, I can tell you, the owner, if the zoning at the time, if the zoning was more aggressive there, he would have done something there. But that conflicts with some of the town plan where you're trying to keep this aggressive zoning in the village centers. Sometimes you have to step outside of it. You know, like in that area. I did the 2 lots on the corner of Plains and was it Plain? Yeah, the one on right near the intersection of Plains and Skunk Hollow Road. There's 2 houses in there. Same thing. That had septic capacity for lots of houses. What are we gonna do? 3-acre zoning. You know, it's gone. I mean, it looks good, I guess, but it depends where your priorities are.
I think that that would be,
This is a big idea.
that would be really even more than going parcel by parcel, is identifying these resource rich areas that we need to really think about attacking from a zoning perspective to at least make these things possible.
You gotta watch out for spot zoning though. I think there's some form
Yeah,
that's illegal.
That's the
Yeah.
point.
Well, you can spot zone for a natural resource. You can't zone for a specific application necessarily, but if you've got a zone that's ideal for septic disposal, you could say this is a septic disposal zone and have multiples around the area. You just can't have one in one place and nowhere else anywhere else.
That's a great idea. I mean, you could put that in place in zoning, see what the landowners have to say about it. There, like I said, there's some that don't care to see any house on their property, and that might work for them, or when they moved on, you're all set, you protected it. But conservation easement, not much different. It's not an easement, but it's a zone. An overlay.
Justin, speaking just in a general way, because I know you want to be careful about, your remarks, but are there certain sections of town that you worry about in terms of kind of the age or the performance of, like, where does a town have problems, do you think, in terms of existing septic issues? Where would people be most likely to sign on to a waste treatment system?
Alpine Drive. There's just an example. Off of Raceway Road, Alpine Drive, it's an old Act 250 development that, from the 70s or whatever. There's some good soil on there. I did on the right side of the road. I just did an ADU for landowner. But he had to go through Act 250 to build an ADU, and it was gut wrenching. And that's a whole nother subject. Act 250 is obstructing. I've got two nearly identical projects where Act 250 made one go through a full application and the other one got to do an administrative amendment, 1 page.
To do an ADU?
To do an ADU.
Act 50 for an ADU?
Act 250 for an ADU. If you're in an Act 250, that's if you're already in a permitted development. And I guess they're just doing their job, but it's obstructing the ability to build ADUs now. That's just one thing that is. And I don't find town zoning to be restrictive or obstructionist really in any way. It's mostly Act 250 if you trigger it, or if you have wetlands on your property. Virtually every 2/3 of the property I work on, I have to have a wetland consultant called or the state come out. That's made things pretty difficult. That's my.
Could you elaborate a little bit more? There's something you said that caught my attention. You said if it is an Act 250 subdivision, and did I hear you right that any ADU in an Act 250 subdivision has to go through a reapproval?
Yes, amended approval. And this one was the two of them that I did was 10 criteria. Can the schools handle it? Can the fire department handle it? It's all that stuff. And if there's shagbark hickory in the area, you got Indiana bats. It goes on and on and on. So it's if somebody calls me up and says they're in an Act 250 development, I get a little apprehensive right from the get-go,
So does that mean
most everything.
The homeowners association kind of has effective control over whether they can add an ADU?
They do, but if they're in an Act 250 permitted development, they have to go through the permitting process.
So the homeowners association.
It's not relevant. See, it's Act 250 review board that does it.
Right, but who goes there? Is it the homeowners association or the individual homeowner? Do you
Well,
need
if it's an association, they would have to be a co-applicant.
So the homeowners association has control over whether you add it. That
Yeah.
homeowners
Yeah,
association
cool.
in an Act 250 development has effective control over whether you can add an ADU.
What percentage
true?
of? Yeah, did Chuck state that correctly? If I'm a member of a homeowners association and it's an Act 250 association and I want to add an ADU, do I go alone in front of the board or does?
No, it's not a board. It's not really a board. It's an Act 250 coordinator. If they hold a hearing, it goes before a board.
Is that
the hearing
me
gets
that does it?
requested, but you can't do it by yourself. You have to you don't own, equitable title to a community septic. Everybody does. So
So anybody in the association can say, I don't want this, and it's done.
Exactly. I think so. They don't, even if Act 250 is not involved, if they have to sign something, you know, authorizing you to add your flows or whatever, you know, in a permit amendment, a wastewater permit amendment, if they refuse to sign, if you go on the state website, you can see people have done that, and you can see the applicants. There's 30 applicants for a single ADU. Because they all had to co-sign, be co-applicants. It's doable, but community systems complicate things, Act 250 complicates things, and so on, you know.
So it's not,
Just one
it's
more
not
thing.
HOA, it's if it's an HOA with a community system.
Yeah.
That everyone in the community system has to. So if you're an HOA, but you've got your own private septic,
Right,
then you would just as a.
Unless you're an Act 50
Unless you're in
subdivision.
Act 250 development, because you have to modify.
The Act 250
has
permit.
described how many houses and what it is, and you want to change the Act 250 permit.
Yeah.
Regardless of the septic.
well, I don't know that, I don't think that if you're just, you're in Act 250 development, and you're just gonna keep everything on site, on your property. And you've got town water, you're not messing with a shared water system. You go it alone, as far as I know. And the neighbors, you know, anybody, they can appeal it if they really don't like it. You know, they could get involved, but I don't think they don't get involved in that particular, only when it's shared. When you're proposing improvements to a road or water system or wastewater system, it's all shared.
Do you know if there's anywhere in the town of Jericho where we could find out what percentage of our developments fit that category of being Act 250 with community septic? Is there any way to find that out?
You can go on the A&R Atlas and click a button. And it'll show everything. It'll show a little, it looks like a little notepad. And you click it, and usually they've got it pinpointed pretty accurately on the subdivision, but it requires verification. Like if
What atlas is
A&R
that?
Atlas, and you click on, it's not Act 250. Let me look and see what that particular, it's not easy to find here.
Agency of Natural Resources.
Mhm.
So it's under A&R base map data on the legend. A&R base map data, you'll see Act 250 permits. And you click that, and you see lots and lots of little circles, green ones. Used to be notepads, but now there's green circles.
I mean, I would imagine pretty much, well, we have a lot of 9-unit subdivisions that are being done lately to avoid Act 250. A lot of the bigger ones got to be Act 250 at this point.
It's the developers that do it full-time, large scale full-time, they only do projects that produce, you know, 15, 20, 30 units. They won't go in and do an 8 or 9. That's for the guys that space it out every 5 years. You know, there was one on Lee River Road, 8 lots. They waited 5 years, they did 8 more. And I'm not saying Act 250 would have made it any better. That's the thing. So are they, you know, they can circumvent Act 250 all they want in a lot of cases, but that's not a bad thing, because if they have to go through Act 250, the properties are going to cost more, or there won't be as many lots.
Yeah, it's like that one up on Hendy Drive off of Morgan Lane that's 9 units.
Exactly. It used to be, if the Act 250 rule was the 800-foot plus road with more than 2 houses on it triggered Act 250. They got rid of that, which would have caught that one. They got rid of that in exchange for triggering Act 250 with 6 lots in towns with no zoning. That was one of the things that they negotiated. But there's not too many Act 250 projects in the immediate area. Town Hall, there's Starbird, let me see, Griswold Street, or it's the school, I don't know. Then there's the post office. So
So we've got 5 more minutes, I'd say. It's 5 of 8, and then I want to be sure to let Justin go. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time.
I don't mind, I'm a volunteer now in the town. I waited a long time to get involved in the Jericho stuff and I decided to start doing it, so. Yeah.
Thank
Any last kind of questions or follow-up, or Justin, anything that we've kind of triggered for you that you want to share with us?
Justin, what is the biggest part of the cost of a leach field? Like, how much of it is the material? Is that a big part of the expense?
It depends on the type of system, you know, like, but contractors, they charge, their equipment costs a lot, their insurance costs a lot, and their defense, they charge, basically, they have to get X number of dollars a day. They can't say, well, it's gonna take me 5.5 hours to build a leach field. They're just gonna basically say, I'm gonna be tied up on this job the whole day, so. So I would say, just to give you an example, like a mound system, your typical 3-bedroom mound system might be quoted at 30 to 35,000. It's probably 10, 12 in material. So about 1/3. In-ground system, it could be even a quarter of that. I've got a lot of homeowners doing their own system, confident homeowners that know how to read and they know when to ask questions, that do fantastic work, but the state's going to contractor licensing now. I think it might be voluntary to start though.
If the town could come up with a supply of sand that was used to support the kind of housing we want. It's
Yeah.
sand, right? We're talking about sand
Yeah,
material.
yep. Sand is king. Yep. And, yeah, one thing back to the ADUs, I think I meant to mention is if you're aware, there's the ARPA money. I've got a couple of people, you have to be in the right situation. You have to have money to finish the project, but the ARPA money is, I think I've got that one in Underhill, 50 to 70,000 that they're getting. And the condition is that they have to rent that at the HUD rate for 5 years. They're locked in. But 5 years, one day, those people are getting booted. But it helps for a while. It starts at the certificate of occupancy and then 5 years, and hopefully the people that are renting are in a better position to buy a house or,
Yeah.
but the rent could go from 800 a month to 2,000. One of these I'm working on is that the ADU is as nice as a lot of people's houses.
Anything else?
Boy, Justin, this is great.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thanks. This was great.
It's enlightening.
Very
Yeah, I'd be glad to chime in or answer any more questions another day if you want. Just let me know. Send me an email.
Will do. Thank you so much. And I hope your tickle doesn't turn into anything real.
I took the COVID test. I was sure I had it, but I never got COVID. So.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
Have a
All
good
right.
evening, Justin. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
All right. Okay,
Kettle Creek.
you've got that. You're digging
Looking
around
at
in
the 250s, in areas that I know, like Kettle Creek, 10 residential lots, common land. There's an Act 250 thing, but it doesn't say anything about this.
I think Sunset Ridge was at 252, because we had to keep a certain amount of land as common land, but we have all our own water and septic system.
Sunset Ridge, 9 residential lots was Act 250.
No,
Off of
I mean, what,
Packard Road, there's a slew of them.
I come away thinking like the best advice we can give someone is to find a professional at the beginning. Everybody's looking at me,
There's so much knowledge.
there's nothing we
So
can,
much knowledge out there.
there's nothing that we can. We can't really tell, I mean, the thing we need to tell people is find a professional to help you figure it out,
Yeah.
and it may be. Easier than you think, and maybe a whole lot harder than you think, but.
I think, so my key takeaway here for me was, if we look about the current town plan, the priorities of the current town plan, on where to find housing, where to put the housing. And if that is not as realistic as maybe it was thought because of the lack of infrastructure, and infrastructure becomes too difficult to actually realize. Then the next opportunity is these lots that have a lot of, that are good for a lot of septic capacity, so that the sandy gravelly lots, and yes, that survey should be useful for that. But what do we do? Because he made it very clear that that's up to the developer and the person that buys the lot. They might just want to want just one house in the middle instead of, and so.
But what if you,
how can that be incentivized?
but what if you had permission to put a whole lot of houses on that lot that would
So
make,
first of all, you have to permission, second of all, you have to have incentives, right? Those are the two things.
well, they're kind of the same, I mean, the lot becomes, well, it becomes a different buyer for the lot.
Not necessarily, it depends, yeah, it might. I mean, you need permission, and then you need, incentive, and maybe it's an incentive enough that there's now a big lot.
Right, it might be but if you have a 10-acre lot and your only option is to put a single family home or a duplex on it.
Yes, so that's the permission.
Or
you need the
You
permission.
could put on 60 apartments,
Yeah.
you all of a sudden have a whole different buyer.
Mhm.
And you know, and the homeowner,
Although
the person who
He
owns the.
says that that's not the way it works out. He gives that example of the place right across from Silly Hill Road, where there was a plan for 4 or several little single family houses with apartments, and then somebody bought it and said, no, I don't want that.
But this is assuming
So the
that
permission
we're
is-
only thinking about, the current market, and we're not thinking about the town potentially investing or
That's the incentive part.
prioritizing or the JCDC
Buying
purchasing
stuff.
land or, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think,
Or working with developers and the towns working with the developer saying, this is a priority of ours.
Yeah.
This land is gonna become available. Let's partner to make this happen.
So if we have.
Because I think you're right.
if we
I think
have the-
just-
If we have the survey and we can identify those things, then, what are the next steps?
if we're gonna be
Develop
doing something
that
like this,
lot.
I look at it and I think that saying we want everybody to have an ADU is a lifestyle decision. We can't, we really shouldn't be demanding of individuals.
Right.
However, what we can be attempting to do is to do what the person on Silly Hill tried to do, which is encourage developers, when you build, you're gonna charge more for the house when you sell it. So it's gonna have an ADU potential, or maybe an in-law apartment is built into it. Not everybody's gonna buy into it, because not everybody wants to be a landlord, pure and simple, and we need to acknowledge that. But if we can at least make it available or incent the developer through programs that we offer to either build in excess capacity, so some of the homeowners can, if they so choose, convert the third bedroom into an ADU, or to build in what typically used to be referred to as a bonus room on a house. You'd get that bonus room, which was unfinished, but could be finished into a separate apartment if you wanted it to. And that would be one option. The option I like better is to structure it so that we have smaller houses on the lots and use the septic system more efficiently. Now the developer is not, and or we as a town housing group are not anticipating that everybody who buys a house will put in an ADU. We're encouraging the developer to build smaller, less expensive units.
How do you do that?
We make sure they have access to septic, which is a big expense for everything they're going to do. And perhaps we make sure there's density bonuses, there's
Hmm.
other things that make it easier for them to build. Allow larger units, which we do in most places already. And offer incentives.
Have the zoning line up with us as well.
Zoning has to line up with it, but we also have to ultimately put in some town supports. So if you're gonna build a 16 unit construction, like the ones that are just going in on Morgan Road, where you've got, what's it like, I think it's 8 duplexes that are in there.
Morgan Road is 9 single family homes.
Yeah, but then there's.
No,
another
that's Hendy Lane off of there. But if you go up just a little bit higher behind the school, there's,
Oh, that's Jim Carroll.
that's Jim Carroll's place, yeah.
Right, so he's putting in,
I think it's 6 or 8.
I think it's two duplex. It's not all going in right now. I think what's going in right now is 2 duplexes.
There's 3 of them that are up
Three,
there.
okay, 3 duplexes.
Yeah, I think it's got, because there's material there for another one. And that's kind of, okay, if you build that, we'll help you with the septic.
Yeah,
And that can be the incentive. The town can say, we will help you with the
Yeah.
septic to get
Or
us
we'll
there.
run water there.
There's already water for there, Carol.
No, I'm saying we will run,
elsewhere.
if you, right, if there's a lot where you're willing to put up a whole bunch of houses in a dense way, we can help by getting water to you.
Provided you're within reasonable distance of existing water.
Right.
If you're gonna put that off a raceway, we don't have
That's
water
where you
there.
need a town. You need the executive capacity to be able to make deals like that.
That's.
You know, the particular one that he was talking about where the.
On Silly Hill.
Well, it's across from Silly Hill. Across Route 15 from Silly Hill, the Eatons.
That's what he was talking about.
That's what he's talking about. And that fellow was ahead of his time in terms of the size of dwelling units. He was really promoting a tiny lifestyle 10 years ahead of everybody else. So I'm not surprised that anybody with somewhat conventional thinking would come in and say that's just.
So where is it?
It's if you're going from Joe's Snack Bar to the hardware store.
So it's the first end of Silly Hill Road, not the one.
This end, right, the
Yeah.
end, right.
Jericho.
It's across the road from where Silly Hill hits Route 15.
Okay.
That's where like place is.
I don't know. Instead of turning into Silly Road, it's like on the other place. And there's just, there's a little road that goes back behind.
Yeah,
And there's
it's
3.
called place. It used to be called place. It's a bunch
And
of
there's 3 units
condos in there. Yeah.
You wouldn't really see it unless you were looking for it.
Mhm.
Because it's behind the row of houses that's along Route 15.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. Yes.
Hey, Dave.
This distinction between a 3 and 4 bedroom home was news to me too. That's kind of important.
Yeah,
Most people, I don't know what, I do not have any idea, but whether people are now saying, I want a 4-bedroom or a 3-bedroom. The 3 bedrooms were what was very common 15, 20, 30 years ago. I don't know if that's still a common unit. All the ones on Morgan Road are 3 bedrooms on Hendy Drive. Those are all.
this is new, right?
Ours is a 3-bedroom. And
But the issue is for an older home. You know, if you're talking about adding an ADU in an existing home.
Easier when you have.
It's much easier to add an ADU to a 3-bedroom home than a 4-bedroom home.
No.
That's kind of counterintuitive. I think we
It'd
should.
be interesting to
talk with
find out
someone-
what percentage of our housing stock is on a community septic.
Yeah.
Again, if we're pinning a lot on ADUs as a way to get it, and we've got a significant part of our housing on that we should be looking at something else to get our goal hit.
Yes.
Where would we find that? Is that in the permit?
Well, you told us,
For community septic, you didn't,
yeah.
did you say?
I thought he said it was on the A&R map.
Is it on the,
Yeah.
is that community septic?
250 was on the.
Act 250 and the community septic as well.
I think I've been there. It's a map that has a bunch of layers. You can choose what layer you want to look at.
But community septic is one of the layers? Okay.
There should be something on wastewater or treatment facilities.
I think we should talk with someone who has He's special, Justin has his specialty. I think it'd be good to talk with someone with his expertise in community systems.
I'd like to see us bring in a developer, someone who's building. Just,
Do you have any suggestions?
there's a fellow I spoke to a while back who's he lives on the Essex side of the border there off of Weed Road. But he does some development in these areas and seemed pretty informative about what developers are looking for.
Do you want to reach out to him?
I can see if he'd be willing to come in, but I think might be worth also maybe bringing in Tatro, who's doing development, and saying, what are you doing around this?
I don't think it's a good time.
Okay.
Yeah, because of so. All right, I'm gonna move us on to town plan and smart goals. Eric, can you share with us what the planning commission is thinking about asking of us and what do we need to do?
The main task for what I think fits into the AHC is looking at and supporting the bylaw the
Modernization.
the bylaw modernization, specifically as it applies to the character-based development unit, but also village centers, because those are in need of some types of updates. Particular pieces that we should be focused on around that is ADUs and also smaller size housing to allow those to happen. Some of the things in the character-based zoning does not really encourage tiny homes or one bedroom kind of standalone housing or something like that. So we want to get that. And a lot of the zoning and regulations for the village centers are also somewhat restrictive to lot sizes. So we might want to push for something like an 1/8 of an acre or even a 1/16 of an acre lot size.
Or any size. Blood, water and septic, got it. But I still object to the idea that it's the great Lego game of the village centers one more time, where we're not talking about ADUs in other places. And we're not talking about smaller homes in other places.
I understand
just
that,
seems
but
like-
that is the project that the planning commission is working on right
I
now.
understand we're supposed to have our own independent opinions, but
We can have our own independent opinions and we can absolutely talk about that. And right now we're talking about this. We absolutely can talk about that.
The benefit of doing the smaller lot sizes in the village centers is that it's more energy efficient, it's more infrastructure efficient, it's more cost efficient.
if we're building infrastructure, it has, I mean, it's not more energy efficient.
I just have to back up a little bit because I think I'm lost at the very beginning of this. So we are, this is what was, I think, came out of the town plan, right? That the planning commission was kind of saying, okay, this is what you're responsible for, this is what you're responsible for, this is, or the select board, one of those was saying that, right? And you're telling us is like, what are we supposedly responsible for?
We should be focusing on what the Affordable Housing Committee would like to see coming out of the bylaw modernization, specifically as it applies to the village and town centers, which
Okay.
would be the 3 plus the commercial district plus the riverside.
So it's about the bylaw.
It's about the bylaw modernization.
Okay.
Which we
Okay,
have.
so now I'm caught up.
And what many of those bylaws prohibit
Mhm.
are things that we want to encourage. So that's what we should be
I
talking.
agree with that. If
So
we're having an input, I think we should not be leaving alone 86% of the town.
So you said that where it prohibits, because I'm thinking about what's prohibited. You said that the character base, so the Riverside district has some elements to it right now that prohibits small lot sizes or ADUs even, that can't be.
The homeowners association draft, which was on the website on the permit, on the application, prohibits you from having any kind of dwelling in your driveway, in your garage. And it does not allow for ADUs and does not allow for rental of space.
Oh, that was specifically for the sawmill development. not
No, that's for the
the-
entire, that's
the bylaw?
that's the HOA for the entire area there. If you
But
read-
that's the way, that's not the form-based code.
That's not
That's not
bylaws.
character
You said
based,
we're
right,
supposed to
right.
deal with the bylaws. Is there something in the bylaws like that? That would.
The bylaws of the character-based zoning really do discourage. They encourage apartments, but they discourage splitting a house into multiple people within the same building who are not apartment dwellers. So if you want to rent out a room or change, if your house is construction and you want to now turn your garage into an ADU,
Yeah,
it's discouraged
okay, so those
By
are the
an
kinds of things
HOA.
we're.
by the HOA, but also by the character-based zoning. Character-based zoning is that is a garage. It is not a living unit, it is a garage.
So there's two angles here. One of them is to, you know, right now, the charge at first was to look at the bylaws. Basically our zoning regulations before we get to the individual HOAs.
There are other things about the character-based zoning that we can also advocate for, which are things that just add costs without adding housing quality and canopy. There's issues, the slope of the roof,
All those other.
the number of
Burying electric lines.
Yeah,
burying electric lines is fine, but the slope of the roof is kind of like it's empty, dead space. You can't do anything with it. The amount of window space on the ground floor, the prohibition on some parts of it, of the ground floor being used for residential, can only be for commercial activities. Because it's designed to be a storefront. You can have something up above. Some of them are up above will be office space rather than residential space. So those are things that we want to say, do we really want it that way? Is
So
it
we're
appropriate?
Trying to grow commercial activity in there, and that's why we said we only want commercial space on the first floor.
They are trying to turn that into a commercial center. So it would be a lot like,
which one?
no, I'm thinking more like the Williston there, Maple Tree Place, where you've got the commercial retail downstairs and then 2 floors of office space up above. And
It's a lovely model.
it's an interesting model, but wouldn't it be nice if you could have the upstairs be residential instead?
Yeah, I'm not gonna need that much office space in Riverside.
So if the bylaws were changed, then the HOA would not be able to be as restrictive,
Well, that's-
or is that,
It could be less restrictive, yeah.
Could the HOA? be restricted?
right, that's what I'm wondering. Like, would they be allowed to still say, those are the bylaws, we don't care?
Yes, the
Yeah.
bylaws can do things that the zoning. Bylaws can prohibit things that zoning laws allow.
HOA bylaws.
HOA bylaws can
Right,
prohibit
right,
what a zoning law allows.
But if we can change the zoning, then the HOA would have to abide by
Not necessarily.
that, they wouldn't.
The HOA is a private contract between the homeowners within the association.
So the zoning can say you can build a triplex.
Right,
The HOA can say you can only build a single family home.
I'm still waiting for
so
that.
how do we,
Every time I've brought that up, I've been met with a brick wall of that's a legal thing. The town has said we don't want to get involved in that.
This is where I wanna go to Montpelier and say, hey, legislators, you wrote this whole act. What about that? What about HOAs just being able to say no?
I speculate that a lot of people in HOAs in Jericho don't know what's in them and have no idea.
No.
Is,
And
I suspect more importantly that 90% of them don't care what's in their HOA. It's like, I'm here, I pay my dues, don't bother me.
until
Do
they
you
want
think
to
they would
have
be willing to
something?
change them?
If it cost them money, no. If it's free, yeah, sure.
If somebody wants to get elected and then I have to pay dues, because I don't pay dues, I pay for my own lawn to get cut and I pay for my own driveway to get, but other than that, all I remember was at one point they talked about not having clotheslines and everybody went, nah. We put clotheslines in, but nobody does that.
Are you prohibited from adding an ADU into your house?
I don't think so. Well, but there was stuff at the time where, believe it or not, we're talking about septic. The zoning and the state wanted to limit how much septic capacity you could put in. Because, you know, somehow they thought that, well, if it's just for 2 bedrooms, they won't have more kids, and that way we can control the population. It really was for population.
But does your HOA agreement prevent you from adding an ADU?
I have no idea.
Mine does.
Mine does.
Where do you live?
I'm Black Walnut.
And that's a new development.
Are you, do you know if the planning commission is still doing a form-based code education presentation from David on the 20th?
I believe we still are.
Okay, so just as a heads up to everybody, then the next planning commission meeting, I think you're not gonna be making any decisions. It's just gonna be, this is what
Informative.
Formative thing. So if you wanna become familiar with the form-based code as it stands, that
This
might be a
particular
meeting.
one, not like the general, like principle and background of home-based code in general.
I mean, I don't know what David's presentation is gonna be, but I'm hopeful that it is about this
Specific.
particular
Yeah.
form-based code.
I think it's, this is what a form-based code is, and here's the one in Jericho, and you can find it online. It's in the
Yeah,
planning
I mean,
documents.
yeah.
So if that may be a meeting that's worth
Road frontage
watching
is
later.
big too.
Um,
Road frontage requirement.
Mhm.
I mean, if you wanna build a 1,000 square foot house, it's 500 feet by 500 feet, and you figure out how much road frontage you really need for that, but then the requirement is if it's 75 feet or 100 feet. It limits the number of houses that you can build in the road. So people admire neighborhoods where the houses are, you know, this far apart. But in Jericho, we don't permit that. We require extensive road frontage, even in the village centers, much bigger than a house in the driveway.
So that's because of the speed limit, because didn't it used to be the speed limit was 35 in Jericho Center, and then decades ago, we changed it to 25. But other than that, I think there's a correlation between what this allowed speed limit is and the road frontage, because the idea is they don't, if you look at like, go to Essex Junction, Seneca Lane Drive, all those things, little bitty houses with lots of road frontage, but it's 15-mile-an-hour speed limit in there.
But when were those houses put in?
They're put in the mid-60s to 70s. But the thing is that it's the speed limit, and there's always cops in there, because I sneak through there if I come from Rackett's Edge and have to go over to Williston to do anything. But it's the speed limit, and I thought it,
So why is the road frontage required? The road frontage requirement here is not correlated with speed limit.
well, we'll see. I think it is. If you go out, if you're in Jericho Center, all those houses are close together, right? And it's not
They're also
25
built
miles.
way before zoning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think the 25-mile-an-hour happened after zoning came in, but the thing is, they're close
So you
together.
see
Then
there's
as
a
you get
state
around,
requirement for speed limits that has to do with
how dense
density.
the driveways are, because it goes up to 35 miles an hour once you make the curve by Barber Farm Road. Then it's 35 miles an hour all along till after you get past Sunset Ridge. Then it actually speeds up to 45 down by the old peat farm there, and then going down the hill to Richmond.
I understand that,
It's,
but-
the speed limit changes when you cross the town line.
Right.
Yeah, but also if you look at the density of the housing, once you get by the peat farm, there's not very many. There's David Sunshine's house and 1 or 2 others, but other than that, the driveways are spaced far apart. But
There's
if-
a whole document on this, setting speed limits, a guide for Vermont towns from vermont.gov. The principles for setting speed limits. And it has, there is something about density.
So I think,
But the road
What's-
frontage required on Route 15 is not that much. I mean, if you look at what the road frontage is in each district, each zoning district, it's not correlated with speed limit. The speed limit changes a lot within a zoning area.
Is there any
Road frontage does.
room for thinking about this soil situation when it comes to, I know we're talking about like the centers and the density and, you know, recommendations around that, but just given this new information. Like, in terms of what we would recommend to the town. planning.
I'm with you on that, yes.
Yeah,
We want greater density. It's town and the county and the state are all saying, put your density near your village centers
mhm,
where you have concentration of infrastructure to support it. That means we need to preserve the potential for on-site or at least municipal wastewater with surface dispersal. So that means like the area right across by the school, which is great soil, probably shouldn't be developed. It should be preserved for wastewater.
mhm.
And the areas probably in parts of the commercial district should be done that way as well, wherever the soils are right. So that would be, if we want higher density in parts of parts of the town, we need to make sure there's septic capacity nearby,
Mhm.
and that would be something we should encourage.
All right, I want to move us on to, so there are two, career goals that the Affordable Housing Committee and the town plan is, we're the ones that are supposed to kind of guide them. What is it? How do you guys frame it?
Advocate and monitor, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So, and those two are pretty kind of general amorphous things that you're kind of doing anyway. So I don't know. I don't know that we need to spend a whole lot of time on them. One is, we're gonna work with the JCDC and with market participants, residents and developers to identify parcels, policies and funding sources to help meet the housing targets. And the other is provide education resources to help landowners learn about opportunities to create new housing units.
And this is the planning commission charging us with that essentially.
Yes, but it really is the select board.
The select board that approved the town
Approved
plan
the,
is
yes,
kind of charging us with that.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, I think the planning commission might have, when we sat down on right after it was approved, that first meeting we had was, okay, which part of town should have this responsibility?
Right.
Um,
kind of keep pushing these things forward, so.
So one of them is to sit down with the JCDC and figure out, how to increase housing. Basically, it's kind of a big topic. It's like,
Mhm. Identify parcels, policies and funding sources.
I think
Okay.
the idea around that is we've got the space in the commercial district that would be suitable for housing development. Is there something that we can work with the JDC to facilitate that, whether it's through a purchase of the land or purchase of the infrastructure, or whatever it would take to get that going?
So you think it's project specific, not just general, like, if you want to do this, then this is kind of your roadmap of, you know, it could be like designing roadmaps. Like, so you have like certain scenarios, like purchasing something or something that comes up, like how can you develop like scenarios for all of those things? And here are potential funding sources, and that would be like a whole job that's a big job.
Yeah, my recollection was more project specific,
I think
because
that's a little more managed.
that's something we can do. I mean, we should certainly start with meeting with the JDC and saying, okay, what funding resources are available? And then if we can start identifying specific areas, start pushing and advocating for them.
Yeah.
However, what you just said though is something that is baffling to me that we as a town don't have, which is a local community member who has land who says, I really want to see this, I really want to partner with the town and see this land used for housing. And then there's no roadmap for how to handle that, who to talk to, what to do. with that, and that's shocking to me. And something I think would be useful to develop.
Do we have any connections, contacts to the homeowners in the commercial district or the property owners in there? I mean, are they receptive in any way, shape, or form?
Maybe. I mean, I'm being cagey because a couple of years ago now, when I first started as chair and had no idea, I mean, I still didn't know what I'm doing, but had no idea what I was doing. I reached out to some of them and just said, hey, let's have coffee. Tell me what you think I should know. And the sense that I got was that there was an appetite to see things done, and there was a feeling that the town was never going to be a partner in doing that. I got
You
the
got your
sense.
hand slapped.
So I say, yeah, I mean, I saw ideas, or I heard ideas, I saw plans. But a real sense that there wasn't any confidence that they would have a partner in the town, or that it was something the town would prioritize to make happen.
So was it because of the lack of infrastructure, wastewater, water?
No, the lack of people, an executive who can help you make it happen.
I think there's small town history. I think some of it is feasibility. I think some of it is just long relationships.
Yeah, I think some of it was they wanted all the benefits without any of the costs.
Yeah, the whole commercial development
Yeah.
thing. Anyway, so I think that, you know, I think that these are conversations that we should be having and we should be opening back up, but.
And we're competing with other towns for this. So, you know, if you approach one town and they say, hey, great, let me show you around town, we'll find the spot and figure out what, you know, it's like, we'll work together, you know, we really want to make this happen. And then you go to another town where, you know, you get no help, no support, no expertise, I don't have the time. We're working on that zoning change and it'll be done in 4 or 5 years.
So I'm just, you know, trying to understand specifics of that. So here we are, like, talking about the commercial district, talking about property owners in the commercial district that you sat down with, that you said, hey, how have you thought about, or how could we construct housing in the commercial district specifically? It was about like constructing housing
I sat down and just said, I don't know what I'm doing. Tell me what you think I should know.
as affordable housing chair.
Exactly. And so some folks said, I have great ideas for housing. In fact, I have some plans and here's what they are. And we could get this many units. And I know so-and-so who would really, you know, could really be interested in developing their parcels over there. And then I had other people who were like, hey, I've been watching this town for a while. Here's some zoning suggestions I have. And I mean, they ran the gamut, but for this conversation,
Yeah.
yes.
And then where did that break down? I mean, if they have ideas for putting down housing units, where did they feel that the town was working on that? Was it zoning, or was it, what else did they need? Did they want financial incentives?
I think it goes back to the Dominic from St. Albans, and many of us heard talk, I mean, the approach that he described. Which was, I mean, a lot of these deals are complex, and you're putting together financing from a bunch of different places.
So they need they need to know, or they need.
And they're gonna need a partner.
I
You're
think
trying
that
to-
you're gonna hear different things depending on who you talk to. There's long history there. There are different sides to the story. I don't know where.
Yeah, no, the
but-
reason I'm asking.
But I think that there is a fundamental lack of trust on both sides that makes it difficult for for these conversations to progress.
Yeah, but now we're being put right in the middle of that. So that's what I'm trying to understand, like. where
So
we're-
I was up in Swanton, and looking at housing. And there was a school, a big school there. There was a new housing just opened. The sign was like congratulating Joe Biden for it. So we know it's new, but it was Champlain Housing Trust. It was the USDA. There was like, and the town of Swanton. I mean, it was, there might have been applications for financing that involved town support, writing the, whatever, helping to kind of put the deal together, just sort of having the expertise to make a complex deal work, running interference with, for the town. I mean, I was, back in a previous life involved in citing, 3 manufacturing plants in Vermont. And the difference in the reception from the towns had a great deal to do with where we ended up. Was someone saying, let me introduce you to the planning, here are the issues, here's the zoning, here's the, water, septic, all that stuff. There's someone, who could say, who could put a deal together and we say, yeah, I know this is where you want the element, but the septic goes over there, and let me talk to that guy for you and see if we can make a deal to get the, it's like that sort of deal making. And follow through, someone who's committed for follow through on the part of the town. And, right now, the situation you've got is you have a town administrator, that then needs to get permission from the select board in a public meeting. To be able to represent the town.
All right, this is a conversation that we're gonna keep having. Keep continuing.
So to move forward and on the short term, why don't we at least schedule something up with the JDC? And see what they're working on, what we can do to
It's a good idea.
Yep.
at least get some movement on that.
Mhm.
And if we want to bring up what can be done in the commercial district, that would be a good time to get that started.
To kind of have something to kind of focus the attention on to
Yep.
start with.
And the JDC, as I recall, last time, I mean, they're relatively reinvigorated. They were pretty moribund for a long time.
They're down to 3 members. And,
Weren't they always 3 members?
no, they were 5.
They were, okay.
What is it specifically that they do though? I hear their name, but I mean, shouldn't we be hearing about them directly involved with the project?
Weren't they involved with the railroad?
Yeah, and I've heard nothing about that in about a year.
I think it's a separately incorporated thing from the town. It's not part of town government.
I think it has the ability to bond for activities. I'm not sure whether it has that independent or not. Isn't that function of it is to get bonds for development activities?
Yeah.
I
Okay,
mean, Eric, there's no way for Eric to speak, but. And, in terms of who can talk to.
they are a nonprofit corporation.
Public benefit, no?
Separately incorporated.
Foster, encourage, and assist the select board in the development of projects that contribute to the economic, cultural, recreational, and environmental well-being of the community. The sole member of JCDC is the town. Its directors are appointed for assigned terms by the select board. Anyway, you can go to their website and
Fire property.
read. It's still kind of vague. They don't have a clear operating budget.
They don't have
And
taxing on them.
I think they're trying to figure out, what they want to do. I think Railroad Circle is an opportunity, is kind of an opportunity pilot case for them to move through the stages, but there's also they don't seem to be feeling any urgency about moving forward with that project.
Any reasons or? High interest rates?
I mean, I can't speak on their behalf. I
Okay,
mean, I can tell you what I've observed in meetings. personal opinions are, but I wouldn't want to speak on their behalf. I mean, I think that acquiring the property was the urgency because it wasn't it was gonna go.
Yeah. it's not the-
And so now that they have it, that piece of urgency, I think they want to take their time. I know that
They
Green
bought
Mountain,
ARPA money, so it's huge.
Green Mountain Habitat for Humanity isn't interested in refurbishing the existing farmhouse. They're only interested in building new. And so I think that has kind of made them pause because I don't think that there's interest in. I think that they want to refurbish that home and maybe make it into a duplex in addition to building a couple more units on the site.
Mhm.
And so I think that they're pausing as they kind of think those options.
So is Habitat kind of had their own people look at the home and say,
Yep.
this thing's pretty old and.
It's not a matter of the home. I mean,
Okay.
yes, they have done a walkthrough of the home,
Mhm.
but Habitat just doesn't like to refurbish homes. They are able to be more cost effective
Oh, okay.
building new.
I'm trying to work around and, okay.
Mhm. And you never know what you're gonna find, and
Oh,
they've
the drive
they
all
talked about having done a couple of
He knows all about that.
projects and just getting burned.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna move us on to the next item on the agenda, which is tabling at town meeting. Chuck, Wayne, and myself will be there. Richard, are you gonna be around for town meeting? Are you on vacation? Because it's part of school vacation.
What-
Are you coming back?
What day?
It's March.
March.
March 5th. I should be here on that day.
Um,
I want to be able to rotate into them last year. Um, and
So
Things I want to say.
Are there people that are, but if the meeting's going on, I mean, there must be kind of low flow at the
Yeah,
table, right?
it's pretty dead during.
Well, that's when people have time to talk.
They come by
They
and.
when they go, they come get stuff to coffee or something. That
Oh,
Yeah,
kind of people.
I just chatted for longer times because it's not so many other people, it's more one-on-one during.
So I will be
Come on, get a cookie and a cup of coffee and talk to me.
in touch with the four of you, or the three of you, about arrival and, I don't know, if I need help bringing stuff over or whatever.
so it's you, me and Chuck? And who else?
I'll be at work.
Richard.
Oh, Richard. Okay.
So we've
I
got,
don't guarantee I won't be on vacation anyway.
oh, that's right. Do I this for tonight?
In June.
Woo!
Yeah,
Oh,
I may or may not follow at some point. Depending on how much pressure is put on me.
I mean, once you see her retired, you may just be like.
What's that?
Okay, so we've got, a couple of things that we'll have at the table. The three things that we had talked about that would be new, that we had talked about at the last meeting were kind of, again, introducing the housing goals and getting them comfortable with seeing those. We talked about kind of putting together the highlights for our pitch for zoning recommendations, and also the kind of HOA PSA.
I think these charts are fantastic.
I like the
Yeah,
HOA.
I'd like to help you cut the words in half.
Great.
But
Yeah,
your
so
color contrasts are terrible, but
you can tell me your favorite colors. So any feedback is welcome, and I don't know, unless someone is really uncomfortable with anything. It's 8:45, and I want to make sure that we have time to talk about other things. I don't know that we need formal vote on any of them. If you guys want to just give me feedback, or if you've got some really clear, we should not say this, we should not do this.
I really like it.
I move that we provide input to SJ and, your discretion on fine.
Okay,
And I'd be happy to, I can work on getting it printed up for you,
okay.
I can do that. All right.
The, we can print here on like legal 11/17.
No, I can do that. Wow.
If you want to make that happen,
Yeah, I can do
that's great.
that. I did that last year.
Okay, and I don't have any, I don't know, Rodrigo, what your bandwidth is in the next week or two to think about putting the zoning recommendations into, I don't know, into some kind of.
I'd like to work, well, we kind of had them. I mean,
Well, that's why I was kind of pointing to
yeah,
the two of you, because we've done it, it's just a matter of really
I don't think-
boiling it
I don't-
down to. a
yeah, I don't
couple of-
think we need to be like, I mean, the planning commission is gonna worry about the details. I think,
Yeah.
I think we had kind of 8 or 9, like, really kind of core suggestions that illustrated a point of view.
So you're thinking of a handout or something?
Maybe just a poster.
A
I can't
poster would
imagine.
be- Poster
We
would
can
be
do a
better,
handout if
and
you
then
want.
make it a little more, like,
Whatever you want.
Were
I
they,
think that might be nice, because people might not want to actually stop and chat about it, but want to know some things.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Sure.
we want to talk about things that they'd be surprised or prohibited, just.
So if I can put you guys on that to think about, then it can be whatever format.
have we seen these recommendations?
well, this is
before?
what we
These are
went
the
on
ones-
about it around about that we eventually we were asked to look at the current zoning
Mhm.
regulations.
Mhm.
And then from our point of view, and then come up with proposals on how to change them
Mhm.
after the town plan. And then we made some suggestions and we kind of went back and forth a little bit in the committee, and then we handed like some of that to Susan.
We had a motion.
Oh, this is a while ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's not anything new. It's
Yeah,
just
okay, I just
Showing
wondered
what
if
we've
I
done.
boiling
last
it
year.
down to.
haven't been completely in this world in a couple of last week, so I missed this stuff. Okay,
We understand.
so let me just ask a question on proper methodologies here. So there's 4 of us that are looking at these charts, right? Do we send only to you from the charts you sent us? So like, let's say Chuck's looking at the one on the HOA. Do I send only to you? I don't copy everybody, right?
Correct.
'Cause it's
Yeah, I'll send them,
More
yeah, but
than-
just send them just to SJ and she can.
Okay, I see, all right. Just
And
want-
if you happen to reply, I'll just don't comment on each other's comments.
Yeah, okay, okay.
Okay, I'm gonna move us to liaison updates. It is 8:48. Thank you, everybody. My energy just really dipped, but I'm back. Okay, liaison updates. I'll open, I feel like I do too much talking. Any liaison updates? Go for it.
Okay, so this is from last month, because they're always meet after us. But anyways, there's I think it's Corinna Daly,
Mhm.
who's on the Conservation Commission. And so what they did was, there's that, the old dam over here that, and there were some concerns that there were some, electrical equipment, and that if it's, replaced and removed, that there has to be some care with the disturbing the ground. So they got 4 or 5 bids on the job from companies that actually do this for a living. And so she actually came up as with a choice of a company called Fitzgerald Consultants in Colchester. And so they had a motion and a vote and unanimously agreed that she should take her recommendation to John Abbott.
Cool.
Just the one on Silly Hill Road.
Yeah.
Yeah, the company that will remove I think it's over here somewhere.
On Silly,
On Silly Hill Road.
Oh, okay, yes.
Is there any other dams in the town?
It's the only one I know of is Silly Hill too, but I didn't know there was any kind of electrical stuff there, but.
Yeah, it used to be a power source for one of the mills that we had here way back when.
Oh, really?
The house on the other side was the mill
Yeah.
house.
belts,
Okay.
was it electric or with belts?
It may have started out with belts and might have moved it into electric at some point because it, I don't know if there's a generator in it. It'd be kind of cool to pick that back up and
Yeah.
get it working.
All right, any other liaison updates?
Planning Commission spent most of the time talking about the proposed alternatives for the bike ped path between here and Mills River. And we moved forward with a recommendation to the town that they go for the hybrid path, which has got a sidewalk going from Griswold up to about Packard, crossing the street, and then a bike pathway on Raceway Road.
Does that mean paving this way?
It does not mean paving the Raceway at this point.
What we do without the discussions on Front Porch.
Oh, man.
The endless entertainment, okay, bike path,
There you go.
okay, okay.
And that's what they're
And then how
suggesting,
does it connect?
crosswalk at Packard.
And then where does it go from Raceway? Does it just go all the way to 15?
All the way to 15.
Okay,
There was also something in Front Porch Farm about where it goes from there and then Jollies, I think.
There's some old rail bed down by Jolly's, but in order to get to that, you'd have to find what's left of the old rail track, the rail bed, which is on this side, our side of the river. And then it runs through the commercial district down by Otto Smith and back through there. And that's all land that the landowners may not be receptive to having a bike path through there.
and you'd have to cross. the river.
No, you wouldn't, because it's almost all on this side. Because the old rail bed, I believe, stayed on this side of the river. I'm not sure of that, though.
Oh, it would mean that you wouldn't go, yeah,
You wouldn't go over the bridge on Raceway. The two bridges on Raceway.
got that.
So it goes from the elementary school here to
It goes from Griswold
Griswold,
up to Packard.
Packard.
They'll put there'll be, and just a little bit
On
past
that
Packard
side
to
of the-
Raceway on that side.
Okay,
There'll be signals installed with the blinking lights to put you onto Raceway. Follows Raceway all the way to 15 again.
okay. Well,
Anything else?
Can you say if the wastewater presentations that are happening in March, do they represent a 90% or 60%?
60%.
And then when would the 90% be done?
My fortune telling capabilities don't go that far.
No, not on wastewater.
No. This was supposed to have been delivered to us in October.
Right.
Just
But-
from the DRB.
Wait.
The DRB met on January 24th, talked about assault on property. I've only seen the minutes, I didn't attend the meeting, and I'm not completely clear on where it stands. Except there are like a couple of wrinkles, like there was something about road frontage of one of the units being actually too large, but that's. There's gonna be a waiver application for that. Or there is one, that has been submitted for that, then the town of Underhill all of a sudden kind of spoke up and said, hey. What are you doing? And you didn't invite us to comment on this whole development, and apparently a very small portion of it is actually on Underhill land, so they got their nose all over that giant sound.
Yeah, that was an interesting.
And want to be involved. And then the rest was just discussing, I think, what I understand, so there's like two phases to this, and one of them is just the subdivision itself to get that approved and just to get the rest approved, but the details of the how it's developed. And there was a lot of description about that, but I'm not sure that anything has been decided yet. Because then the next thing was just they went into executive session or deliberative session. And I don't know if there was any outcome to that, so.
Which was this review again?
The sawmill property.
Oh, song, right.
That does remind me, we did also have a presentation on the sidewalk extension from Mills River to Jericho Market, from Jericho Market to Park Street. Which is interesting as well. That's going to be on the Jericho Market side of the town of the road. And there are several homes that are probably going to be really, really close to the sidewalk.
Right, and that's the thing that I saw on Front Porch Forum where somebody's saying, why are you doing that? There's already a sidewalk on the other side.
Yeah, wait, this Jericho Market, you mean Jericho Corners? You were Chuck those?
No,
No, Jericho.
the big
the new one.
supermarket by the Union
Oh,
Bank.
okay.
It's not really
I always think of it as Besso's, but I've heard Jericho Market. I thought people were referring to that. Okay.
That's
So
right.
It's a
I'd like
long
to share
sidewalk.
two observations with the select board. One is they had a hearing on the budget. Which they released at the hearing. So I scanned it and was just astonished to see that they put nothing in the budget for water and sewer. There's 8 reserve accounts for things like conservation, preservation of records, roads equipment, maybe 4 of them was more than $100,000 and we're now looking at a budget. If they're saying there's no town money for water and sewer, that means the next budgeted money for that coming out of the town would be in July of 2025, which to me is a statement of non-seriousness. And we didn't put in a town plan, we're only gonna do water and wastewater if we get free money. And I know there's grant money out there. There's grant money out there for all kinds of things, but the idea that they're planning on spending no town money for the next 16 or 17 months, to me is kind of a statement of non-seriousness. The second thing is that they let a contract to the fellow who's designing the town garage to do an analysis of the staffing of the town, but they did not lead with what do we need in terms of staff to execute on the town plan. Basically, it's a little half a page little contract that's basically go talk to all our people and then go compare salaries of other towns and come back with a salary study. There's no kind of mention of the roles of the select board, what we need in terms of executive capacity. It's I don't know what it is, some sort of performative thing, but they're not going to be getting the answer to the question. Did not ask the question, what do we need in staffing to execute on the town plan we've laid out? So like both of those two of the things that were over on and on again in the town plan was wastewater and our executive capacity. And they're basically, in my view, taking a non-serious, this would be a great opportunity for us to put money in the budget in a reserve account as a way to communicate to the town that we are going to do this. We've had multiple studies in the past and didn't plan on doing anything and didn't. But this is serious. It's going to be investment on the part of the town. We're going to start putting money away and we're ready to start talking about it. And they're missing that opportunity. And I'll tell you, if there's in order to get ARPA money, you have to have contracts already let. And getting from 90% to contracts before the end of 2024 with no budget
To
So
me, it doesn't make
to
any
get the
sense.
money, if there's money out there for wastewater, you basically have to have the blessings of the select board, right? That you're representing the town. You can't say, I as a citizen think the town, that wouldn't work. Okay.
Well, you can add money to the budget, that from the floor, but the select board is not putting money in the budget that they're gonna present to the town.
Mhm.
There's no money for
Mm.
water or wastewater. And it's really hard to believe. I mean,
It's not gonna happen. It's just not gonna
you
happen.
think just after you finish the town plan,
Yeah, right.
that would have been top of mind when you complete the town budget. It's like really an indication. It's been a 50-year charade
Mhm.
on using fictitious infrastructure to restrict housing for people with modest incomes. And that charade is in full flower. We're getting a wastewater study done. We really don't give a damn when it gets done. And when it does get done, we're not gonna have any money in the budget to move the ball forward. They did make a signed commitment in the housing resolution to within 90 days after the 90% completion of the report to basically have a plan laid out. I mean, the select board has committed to that.
Is this the plan that, is it 60% now? Is that the plan?
The housing, it says here that, lead
Yeah.
a robust public process to review the village wastewater feasibility study to inform decision-making, and within 3 months of receiving the 90% report, establish well-defined next steps regarding municipal wastewater infrastructure for the village centers and or the commercial district, and identify required municipal resources, staffing, and capacity.
So when we get to 90%.
They've
You
committed,
can
they've
hold your
committed to
nose
this,
To the
but
fire for
they're
that.
doing a staffing study that's not gonna give them this information.
It's 9 o'clock. I want to keep going. There are 2 more things that I just want to note.
Well, I think
Select
that's,
board
I do
on
think
the
our
topic.
committee should go on record as objecting to not having any water, wastewater in the budget, money in the budget. I mean, that's our job, is to let them know what we think and where they're going off the rails. And this is,
How would we do that?
So are you suggesting that we as a committee put forward a statement to be presented at the town meeting saying that the select board needs to include a provision for additional wastewater support activities upon receipt of the 90% piece?
right, I think that's a poster that's at our booth.
Is that something we're gonna put to, we, as the Affordable Housing Committee, want to have somebody, I won't be here, raise on the floor at the town meeting, since it's not currently noticed and warned?
It's,
That-
yes, I
no,
think we should.
specifically-
I think we should, and I think the
specifically,
planning commission should.
We, as the Affordable Housing Committee,
Yes,
encourage the select board to allocate funds, pick a number, what it is, $100,000, it's supposed up there, for initial implementation stages of
So
the
we would
wastewater treatment.
amend the budget from the floor.
Is that what we want to do?
I
Is
think-
that what we want to do?
I think that we should ask the select board to make the motion. Because
Why wouldn't we do that?
Why wouldn't we do it ourselves?
Because the select board needs to stand up and take some leadership for what's going on. They approved a town plan and they omitted it from the budget.
So
So-
are you suggesting then that, again, I
I'm
won't
sorry,
be here,
Aaron's home.
are you suggesting that you stand up as a member of the Affordable Housing Committee and say to the select board, the Affordable Housing Committee says you need to do this? Is that what are you asking for authorization to do that?
Yeah, yeah, and I also think the planning commission should do it.
That's separate. We're not the planning
I
commission.
know it's separate, but
Let's talk about the commission we are.
yeah.
You know, you've shared this with me, this information about the history and about where we are now and about like how the percentage that we're gonna be into the town plan, which is like, I think 20% by the time 2025 are at the.
Yes, at the end of the budget that was gonna be passed in March,
We're gonna
at the
be
end of that
20%
budget, we'll
through the
be
town
20% of the way through the
Yeah.
town plan.
So by March 2026, we will be
Yeah,
that far, March.
yeah.
2025.
So I think that it's. Perfectly appropriate to raise that. I would raise it in like 3 points and really kind of limit.
So again, if we do that,
Mhm.
if somebody does it, there are 2 ways you can do it. You can do it as a private individual who happens to be on the Affordable Housing Committee. Or you can do it as a representative
Thank you.
expressing the willingness of the Affordable Housing
I'm
Committee.
fine with the left.
So does somebody want to make a motion that we do that?
That I do not think that asking the select board to make a change is going to be effective. They were very clear in their response to you at the meeting, why they didn't do it and why they don't want to do it and why they're not going to do it. So,
And nothing is gonna be effective
so
until the
it's
select board.
either we do a performative thing that just makes them say it again at town meeting that they're not gonna do it. Or you make an amendment, we make an amendment to the budget
Yeah, I don't
that
think it'll
then
pass.
the floor can vote on.
I don't think it'll pass. You know, this thing is gonna take leadership from the select board. And even if the town, I mean, I think a motion from the floor is not gonna, I don't believe it's gonna pass. And adding $100,000 kind of on the fly, it's gonna take leadership from the select board. And we can add $100,000, but it doesn't mean a damn thing unless the select board has decided to exercise some leadership.
No,
I'm just trying to
I'm personally
understand
not in favor of
effectiveness.
performative actions. Either you do something to make something happen, or as a private citizen complain how it is, but either we are saying, do this. And as a committee standing behind it, we're saying this needs to be done. And it's a floor vote on raising 100,000, or even if it's 50,000, some number. Then we're behind it. But if it's all just to throw egg on their face, I'm not interested.
No, it's, well. I appreciate where you're going with this. It's basically what we're asking them to do. Is to be committed and to show some leadership. And so,
Is this the right venue to do that?
it is the town meeting. There is no other, I don't know, what other venue would it be?
Conversations, select board meeting, select board hearing on a regular Tuesday or Thursday when they have one.
I just don't know what the outcome. I don't know how effective. I don't know what we get out of doing it.
I think the odds are it won't be added at this budget, okay? So if I believe a motion from the floor, however well presented, will not carry the day at this town meeting.
Is it like public awareness that you're trying to?
I believe if the select board were to say, we omitted it, you're right. It's in the town plan. We would like to add it. Now, that is possibly what happened if they hear a really strong point of view from the housing committee and the planning commission and everybody else involved. I already spoke with one of them who agreed it was a mistake. And I think making a motion from the floor that fails would be a disaster.
But it sounds like what you're really pushing for is some basic backroom arm twisting that's not at the town meeting. Getting them to agree to it, and then they can, through back office, non-public.
If they decide they're gonna add it, then we don't need to say a word.
And that's again, by non-public, private conversations, convincing them to do that. Before town meeting.
I think I'd be really disappointed if the planning commission is not in there yelling and screaming on this issue already. But basically, they're blowing you off.
That's a different issue. We're Affordable Housing Committee here.
I mean, does this need to be a?
Well, you're talking about back room.
It
Yes, I'm
sounds like
saying
from what
they need to
Sister
come
was
from
saying,
multiple places.
did you raise this at the?
This came up at the select board meeting and their answer was. Until we get the report, we don't even know what we're gonna be moving forward, if we're gonna be moving forward, what the recommendations are gonna be. We don't have enough information to even know what we would be allotting money towards. Now, I understand the argument. And I am in 100% agreement with you that we're not looking to pay bills. We're looking to set money aside for future expenses because we are actually going to do a project that we know will have money attached to it. That we don't need to have a line item budget. That is what you're
The
arguing.
mistake I made,
And that is
it's a-
not how they, that is not how they are thinking of it, and that they are not willing to entertain that right now.
Well, what did
And-
not come up at the meeting and what if they had released the budget before the hearing, I might have been quick enough to pick up on this, is we did not talk about putting money in a reserve fund. And we put money in a conservation fund.
Yeah.
Having no idea what it's gonna be used for. We put money in the fire department puts money, we contribute to a fire department budget that has a
It
reserve
sounds
fund.
like if we say that.
have
at
reserve
town
funds all
meeting,
over
It's
the
gonna be too late.
Pardon?
It sounds like if we say that at town meeting, it's gonna be too late.
The select board can make the motion to add it. They can say, I've seen them do this before. We made a mistake. We wanna change this.
So that just screams, this is not something we bring up at town meeting. This is a private conversation with select board members.
I want them,
And there's nothing that says.
if
each of
someone
us-
else wants to make the motion, fine. I don't think it's gonna pass. And if you
Yeah, I'm not saying, I'm saying we should have private conversations with select board members. And
Absolutely,
say, this is something we think you should have on the board.
we should be, yes.
And that's something we can all individually do, but that is not the committee doing it.
Okay.
So if
So if you're
individuals
suggesting that
choose
the
to do
committee
it,
make a motion advising the select board to put money in a reserve account for wastewater, I'm all for it.
Is this a discussion that you wanna have in the hallway at the table? Do you want a big sign that says? Can you believe it? We're this close to wastewater and they didn't even put a thing in the budget and,
But
And-
if we all talk to them and they say, yeah, right, as one of them has already said, we made a mistake and we'll try to fix it at town meeting. Then we don't need to do that.
so again, quiet backroom diplomacy and put politics will get what we want, much more than a big public display.
And if that doesn't work, then you go to a public display.
which is not gonna be successful.
It starts to add, accountability. I mean, they put together a budget that disregards the town plan that they just approved. Nice isn't working.
So, all right, Chuck, because it's 9:10 and my back is hurting me because I'm an old guy. What is the specific motion you want the Affordable Housing Committee to
That the
make?
Affordable Housing Committee make a recommendation to the strong recommendation of the select board that they add money to this budget for a reserve account for water and wastewater projects.
And we present that to them now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're
before
crafting
the-
a letter,
Crafting letter.
we're reading said letter as a statement during public comment at the next select board
We
meeting.
give it, right.
We submit them at the next select board meeting. The next select board meeting, someone from the Affordable Housing Committee or the Affordable Housing Committee presentation says, the Affordable Housing Committee believes that a set aside for wastewater should be put into the budget.
When is the
To come.
next, is there one?
It's on Thursday.
It's on Thursday.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan.
Okay. Do we need a motion for that or we just,
And
do we?
so, knowing that the budget has already been done. We are encouraging them to amend it at town meeting
Mhm.
So Thursday, huh?
Thursday.
Today's
Correct.
Tuesday, it's just 2 days, right?
So can we have someone draft a letter? We can all approve it by mail vote or email vote and it's done and then deliver it on Thursday.
Can we do that? I think we can do that. I think we can make a motion to.
It's
do
pretty
that.
simple. We can let it all out.
Well, we could, what we could do is make a motion to approve a letter that SJ approves. I can draft it, everybody can make comments, and then whatever, we can decide now that whatever SJ comes up with, we'll go. SJ's edits to my draft based on input, we approve.
And we just respond to SJ.
Yeah, or
And then,
Are you comfortable with that, SJ?
yep,
That's a good thing, I don't think this is.
no, I think it's fine, there's other shit going on Thursday that's gonna be, hard me in the hot seat, okay.
What? So meaning we putting you in the hot seat to
No,
present
fine.
this?
no, I'll present it.
I don't think you're a good messenger, Chuck.
Fine.
Only because
You're too passionate about it.
You're passionate, but also because you presented this to them once before and they pretty clearly shot you down. And so I want them to hear it from me, from us, not from you. All right, send me something. I'll take a look at it. I'll circulate it to everybody. So we've got a motion. Does someone want to make a motion?
I'll move that we have Chuck do an initial draft of a statement to the select board, encouraging them to set aside funds for an initial
For reserve fund?
reserve fund for initial work around the wastewater report to move forward with it. And that draft be shared with members of the Affordable Housing Committee and final edits to be approved with SJ presenting that to the select board this Thursday. That's a long motion.
And does anyone need to discuss this any further?
I would just revise the place where you said initial, I would make it a little more direct, just a
Yeah.
reserve fund toward, developing sewer and wastewater.
And 100,000. They can put in 50, they can do whatever they want, but. You know, we've got $100,000 in a bunch of reserve accounts.
The size of the others. Are they 100 or are they 50? I guess it probably.
We have over 100 in, I think, 4 reserve accounts, and I
What's
think,
in conservation?
the fire department has a pretty good reserve account. also.
Conservation, didn't we start that like 5 years ago? It was 10,000 a year that was getting pumped into that.
How they just spent.
This is the number 1 element of the 2024 town plan in terms of.
All in agreement on that.
Yeah. Just trying to.
You want to read back what I said and come close to it?
Eric moves that Chuck makes an initial draft encouraging the select board to put aside funding for developing wastewater. It will be shared with the committee and revised and presented by SJ this Thursday to the select board.
Let's call it a reserve fund.
Call it reserve fund.
And set aside reserve.
And is it just wastewater? Or is it water and wastewater?
Just wastewater. That's what the study is.
Okay.
What is the language in the, did you have the resolution?
Yeah, so the
Within 90 days.
resolution that they have signed
Yeah.
said that. They would lead a robust public process to review the village wastewater feasibility study. To inform decision-making, and within 3 months of receiving the 90% report, establish well-defined next steps regarding municipal wastewater infrastructure for the village centers and or the commercial district, and identify required municipal resources, staffing, and capacity.
Okay.
So in preparation for all that, we want them to start setting aside.
Yeah, they've already committed that they're gonna do
Yeah,
that
in
within
preparation
this budget time period.
Yeah.
And that's gonna potentially require.
And to access ARPA money,
It's
you
gonna-
have to
it's
have,
gonna require
it has to be a
funding.
contract.
Yes, so we're just wanting them to start setting that up.
Okay,
And also, we're not gonna talk, I mean, it's,
and they have received a grant to do public outreach. But that is.
Doesn't sound like that's what it's
Not, well, it is in order to.
And
get
that's just
people
part of
on
the
board.
familiarization and building up support for it, but
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
I
That's unanimous. Good job.
Oh, this was good. I like that.
Good job. A couple things that I want you to have on your calendars. I apologize, we're running late, guys. In terms of wastewater, they're doing, public meetings based one for each town center. So Riverside is March 13th. The center is March 20th and the corners is March 26th. And I think they're all at 6:30 in the evening.
Who is doing it?
The select John,
The select board?
yep, John, I don't know. I don't think all this, I think one select board member will be there because I don't.
What were the dates again?
Yeah,
The
And,
13th, the 20th, and the 26th.
It's 3 Wednesdays in a row at 6:30.
One of them is a Tuesday.
March 13th.
There's one day that's weird.
13, 20, and
13th
26.
is the Riverside, 20th is the center, 26th is Corners at 6:30. There'll be announcements. I just want you all to be aware of it. And apparently testing on the Browns River Middle School was supposed to have been done by the end of the year. And I don't know, John hadn't followed up on whether or not the testing had happened and what the results of that testing was.
And for
Bill Butler and I met with the superintendent.
Perk.
Bill Butler and I met with the superintendent on Friday. To make sure he knows what's going on.
I don't know if other dates and things for your calendar. I don't know if this is still happening or if this is happening as a result of the school board meeting the other night. Edie is on the agenda for this week's select board to talk about the education tax increase. I think that'll be worth tuning into. We talked about the planning commission meeting on the 20th about character-based zoning. I sent around the Homes for All toolkit and Barry, that's during a work day, but it's March 13th. Tuesday, February 20th, I'll put this in your emails, at 6:45 is the next housing committee drop-in session. And I don't think that this is gonna be worth it, but if anyone is interested in housing trusts and community trusts, there'll be one, a seminar about them on March 15th that I can send you. I'll send you information on. Okay, I will be in email communication with all of you, over the next 48 hours. I will see some of you at town meeting, and figure out our agenda for March. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn. Thanks, Stacy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Richard. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye.